Welcome to the Stellify Podcast. Today I have my friend Mark Devlin on. It's always an honour to chat to you, Mark. I think the last time we actually spoke was a year ago, and we were talking about mental health and things like that, which ties in very much to what I want to talk about today, and it's basically what you've been tackling this year, which is one of the ultimate questions of anyone looking for truth, is where the hell are we? And is this a benevolent God, if you like, that is overseeing our experience? So when you started, I think it was early this year, you launched is God loving? I can't remember what the title of the show was, but
Is God really good? That was in January.
Is God really good? That's right. And
Ruffled a few feathers, I can tell you.
well, exactly. So how did you? Were you surprised at the response that you got? Because it was a bit of a, well, it was well hit, and the amount of sort of comments but backlash you received, that must have been tough to bear a little bit.
It kind of was, but I'd had a grounding for all that stuff from years earlier when I got into conspiracy research. So when I first stuck my head above the parapet and started posting on Facebook years ago, 2008, I got a lot of hate and a lot of backlash from people that I knew in the DJ world, because up to that point I'd been a full-time DJ immersed in the music business, and all my contacts, all my fellow DJs and people from the industry thought I'd lost my mind. And so I got a lot of hate then. They were like, oh, you're a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist and all that. So I got used to batting all that stuff away. So by the time I got to talking about this God stuff that I have this year, I was well used to deflecting those kind of attacks. But most of the attacks that I got, I've got to say, and I'm just being honest, were from those who identified as Christians.
Mm-hmm.
They were the ones that got most offended by what I was asking, because early on, and still pretty much to this day, what I've been doing is posing questions. And the question was in the title of that first video that I put out in January. It was titled, "Is God Really Good?" And I was questioning whether, based on the evidence that's available to us and the experiences we have in our own lives, is it reasonable to assume that this realm of existence in which we find ourselves was created by a loving, benevolent God that wants the best for us and cares for us? Or does the evidence suggest that it's anything but that? And actually, this realm was created by not a benevolent, loving God, but a malevolent force or entity. And fear, pain, suffering, trauma is built into the very fabric of this existence. And that's why all of us go through it to different degrees. Some people suffer greatly. I've done a lot of work looking into survivors of satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control. And when you get into those dark subject areas, you realize just how bad some people have it and just what a raw deal they have in their lives. And their suffering eclipses ours 1,000 times over. But we all have some kind of suffering, some kind of trauma, struggles. And those of a more new age spiritual mindset will say, and I've heard them saying it for years, that it's all part of your life plan. It's to allow your soul to grow and evolve. You're having these experiences because you chose to be here and you elected to come in and have these lives. But none of that stuff flies with me anymore. I listened to it for years, but for me now, all that amounts to simply gaslighting, and it's making excuses to explain away why pain, fear, suffering, trauma is everywhere in this world. If it's not that, it's religious belief systems, whether it's Christianity or any of the others. I'm not just singling out Christianity, but every religious institution teaches that there's some God figure, and we are its subjects, and we should worship and praise this entity, and that if we go through struggles and fear and pain and suffering, it's mainly our fault because of the choices that we've made and the behaviors that we've chosen. And also, it's just part of what we have to endure here. It's just part of life. And you're judged at the end of your life based on how you've chosen to live it. And again, all this amounts to gaslighting now in my book. I see the world and existence in a very different way to what I did a year ago. So you mentioned we did a show about a year ago. You and Kev came on my podcast, and I was in a very different place back then. So I was still buying a lot of these teachings that, you know, these lives make sense because, you know, we need these lessons to grow and evolve and all that stuff. But I'm not there anymore. I've moved way beyond that, and I just see things very differently now.
Yeah, it is a journey though, isn't it? I mean, I've gone through many stages of like accepting where I am and what I'm doing and what it's about and stuff, and then that changes as you continue on the journey. I mean, where we're at now with this conversation, we might be having a completely different chat again in 12 months' time again. Who knows? But
probably will.
Never stops. Yeah, probably will. But I think that's great because that in itself is the journey of trying to find, for me anyway, I'm trying to find myself still. I think it's like a constant trying to find and better myself. So this is where I'm at with it. It's interesting and I'm not going to go down the route of having a go at Christians because I've been there myself. I'm brought up in a Christian kind of environment, if you like. You know, I was going to church as a youngster.
Yeah, me too. As a young man.
As a young man, and it's interesting that as a young man, I had an experience. So I wasn't a young man. I was a boy. I was probably 8-9 years of age, and my stepdad, who I love dearly, is an atheist, or was an atheist at that point, and he wasn't going to church. Me and my mum were. My mum was a born again Christian. She was looking for something to better her life, and me and my sister would go along with her to church, and they'd have this youth club on a Wednesday night, this CYC church youth club thing, and they would make me feel bad that my dad wasn't coming, my stepdad wasn't coming to church. So they would make me pray. They would say, you know, pray for your dad, you know, to have God in his life, you know, otherwise he's going to hell. I mean, this is how it was sold to me, you know, as an 8-9-year-old boy, put fear into me that I must pray. And I started going to my dad, you know, do you believe in God, Dad? Do you believe in God? And, you know, I think he just got fed up, Mark, after a while, and said, yeah, I believe in God. And then, so I remember going into this CYC one evening and saying, my dad said he believes in God. And they were like, amazing. And see, there's the power of prayer. But my dad just got fed up, and I was just in fear that my dad's going to go to hell. So these stories, we as an early, you know, through our early childhood, we're told these stories, and we buy into these, because what else have we got? We create our perceptions, don't we, from the stories we're given. And the stories we're told is we have a loving God, and we must do this, otherwise we're going to hell. And it's frightening.
Well, we prefer to believe that. It's comforting to think that there's a loving God. We strive to make sense of these lives because we come here without any kind of roadmap or manual. You just wake up one day and you find yourself in this realm, or as soon as you're old enough to have memories, but you have no memory of how you got here. Some people claim to, you know, psychics and such claim to have memories of between lives and pre-life, but I don't. I can't remember a damn thing. And I think it's that way for 99% of people. So what's that all about? We come in here not knowing what we're supposed to do, how we're supposed to behave. And of course, that gets jumped on by those of a religious persuasion because they try to provide the answers that we're seeking, and they claim they've got the answers. So I had a similar experience to you. I believed I became a Christian when I was about 19, going on 20, because I started to feel differently about the world. Even back then, I was trying to make sense of things.
Yeah.
And I just felt like I was going through some kind of conscious awakening 30 odd years ago. And this got pounced upon by an auntie of mine who was a devout Christian. I spoke to her about it, and she, of course, interpreted it as a calling from the Lord. So she said, "Oh, this is wonderful. The Lord wants you in the church." So she was part of an evangelical Christian church, and I got coerced into going along, and I kind of fell in with that crowd, and I ended up attending for the next 4 years. But I remember during that time, I was having a conversation with my auntie, and other things were coming across my radar in terms of what this realm of existence is and what God is. And I mentioned some of these ideas to her, and I said, "Oh, I'm keeping an open mind on all this. I'm open minded." And she said, "Oh, an open mind is dangerous. You don't want to have an open mind." So her thing was, you've got to believe what's in the Bible. Everything you could ever want to know in your life is contained within those covers.
Yeah.
And to even question beyond that is sacrilege and is an insult to God. I did end up leaving that church because I just felt like it wasn't providing the answers that I thought it would. It raised more questions than answers, and I just ended up being more confused than I was when I went in. And that caused me to become an atheist. So I've been there as well. I spent probably 15 years or more as an atheist, just completely denouncing any idea of any sort of God or any meaning to this life. I actually gravitated towards the work of Richard Dawkins. I can't believe it now because I completely, reject everything that he's all about. But
Yeah.
during those years, I was still searching for answers, and Dawkins' work made sense to me. And Derren Brown is a big fan of Richard Dawkins, so I sort of gravitated towards his stuff. But then I went through another process round about 2007, 2008, when I started to go through this conscious awakening and started to become conspiracy minded, if you like, and started to realize that the world is nothing like we've been conditioned to think that it is.
Yeah.
And I fell into this sort of new age type belief system. So I came to accept that, of course, there's a God, of course, there's a creative force. And I still accept that. And before we finish this conversation today, I'd like to try and leave things on a bit of a positive note. So we
Yeah.
must go back to this. But yeah, I came to realize that, yes, there is a divine force, and we are all aspects of it, individuated units of that consciousness. But I fell into what I now see as the trap of believing that we consented to come here, that everything we go through is part of our life plan, and that
Yeah.
it's all designed to help us grow and evolve and enrich our souls. So people with that sort of mindset will make excuses for a child that is born into satanic ritual abuse. And they'll say, "Oh, that child on a soul level chose to come in and experience that." Now, that idea is preposterous to me. There is no way anyone would consent to go through the absolute horrors that some of these children do. So the suggestion that they chose it and that it's all part of their plan is gaslighting to the extreme to me now.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
making excuses for the reality of the situation that we find ourselves in. So it's comforting and reassuring to say it's all part of God's plan. It's comforting and reassuring to say we chose this and it's okay because none of this is happening against our will. It's not so comforting and reassuring to come to the grudging realization that we're actually here against our will. And this is a suffering pit, which is designed to create fear, pain, trauma, suffering, struggles, obstacles, hardships. That's actually the evidence that's staring us right in the face. But I think it takes a brave and courageous individual to accept that and take it on. Because when you first do, it sends you into a very dark place. The realization that life is nothing like you thought it was. And everything's layered. When I came across conspiracy research in about 2007, I thought, oh, I'm starting to figure it all out. It's not governments that run the world, it's secret society networks and the Bilderberg Group and the Council on Foreign Relations. And I thought that was the answer to everything. Oh, Freemasons run the world. Okay, I've got it figured out now. But the more rabbit holes you fall down and the more research you do, the more you realize just how little you really do know.
Absolutely.
And if you're prepared to go all the way with that open mind, there's a reason why open minds are condemned. Then I think eventually you will arrive at this point, which is questioning the very nature of this realm, what created it, how we found ourselves here, and most importantly of all, crucially, how we escape.
Yeah, and it's I've fondly watched your work over this. I mean, I've fondly watched and listened to your work for years now, Mark, as you know. But it's been very interesting watching you talk about these subjects, because this channel that I've set up in a way is about what these questions. So these guys at this 3D level, they already have everything, don't they? They already have the money, they already have the power. They use rituals. We know that. I mean, your research alone in the music industry will testament to the madness of this realm in that respect. So my question has been, and this is where, I want to have conversations like this, is, well, what else is there then? Because there must be something else. They must be gaining something more than money and power, because they've got it. So there's an esoteric side to this, isn't there, Mark?
Well, definitely. And if you're someone that falls down conspiracy rabbit holes, and you figure out that Freemasons and secret societies and stuff run everything in the world, but that's as far as you go, and you don't take it to that spiritual, esoteric, metaphysical level, you're missing the vast bulk of the picture, and you're never going to make sense of this world. Eventually, that research has to lead you to this point. And I'm starting to shape a theory as to why the so-called elites of this world get on so well and get the job done, and so rarely seem to reap any kind of punishment or judgment for their actions.
Mm-hmm.
So just think about it. Think about the convid agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I take it we're not censored on this, no?
Oh, not yet.
All right, so I'm going to speak freely. So if you think about the convid agenda, you think about the architects of the fraud, treason, and genocide,
Mm-hmm.
which was dropped on all of us, because that's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call a spade, fraud, treason, genocide. The government like their little three-pronged phrases, because the social engineers and the behavioral scientists at Tavistock have realized that if it's in threes, it embeds itself in the consciousness more. So that's why they had things like, hands, face, space. So my version is fraud, treason, genocide, which is what it was.
Yeah.
So just think of them. Johnson, Hancock. I've got a special
Whitty,
level of contempt
Valance.
reserved for Hancock. Yeah, Whitty, Valance, all of them. Gates, Fauci. Just think of these individuals. All the dictators in Australia, Dan Andrews,
Yeah.
all these dictators, Trudeau, all around the world. Where are they all now? Walking around, free men and women.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm aware, not one of them has been brought to task for what they did, the suffering they caused, the death that they caused in huge numbers.
Mm.
So my view is that this so-called elite class, we all know who we're talking about, these groups, these individuals that run everything, have figured out that the way to get on in this realm is to embrace fear, suffering, trauma, and to induce that and cause it to others.
Yeah.
Because all the evidence shows us that if you conduct yourself in that way, and you can go way back in human history, it doesn't have to be just this time frame. Look at every period in known human history. There's been war, there's been famine, there's been hardship, there's been strife and struggle. They've figured out that that's the way to succeed in this realm. You get rewarded if you behave in a wicked, evil way towards others. Yeah. Meanwhile, if you try and live your life in the opposite direction, and you live according to natural law teachings, do not treat others in a way you would not wish to be treated yourself, and you conduct yourself in a responsible manner, in a moral manner, you consider whether your behaviors, your actions are going to impact negatively on another living sentient being, what are you going to reap in exchange for those kind of behaviors? Suffering, fear, trauma, pain, struggle, hardship.
Mm-hmm.
Just being real. So one of the things that prompted this God series of videos was not only experiences in my own life, so direct personal experience, but also pretty much everyone I knew, all my friends, were going through hardship of one kind or another. And most of these people are what you would describe as decent people. So they try their best to conduct themselves in a moral way. They try not to impact negatively on others. And all they seem to get in exchange for doing that is a whole ton of shit dropped on them in this world. So I think there's a lesson there somewhere. If you're evil and wicked and you stamp all over other people's rights and you even genocide them, this realm of existence will reward you. If you try and do the opposite, all you're going to reap is hardship. And I believe that's because of the way that this reality has been set up. It's been coded. So there's a lot of talk these days of us living in some sort of simulation realm. And for a while, I couldn't really understand what people meant when they spoke about that, but I get it now. Mm-hmm. So it's like a virtual reality matrix, if you like. The Matrix movie is often used as an analogy for the nature of this reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably getting on the right tracks. So I now accept that this realm has been constructed a bit like a virtual reality computer game. And there's code at the base of it. For many years, I was hearing about energy, frequency, and vibration. So particularly when you get into the studies of Nikola Tesla, he spoke about that. He said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. And that all still applies. It's all still valid. But I think as a subplot to energy, frequency, and vibration, there's coding of the type you get in a computer software program. So we're in a realm which has been coded in a certain way, and it has parameters and it has rules, just like a virtual reality game. If you want to play the game, you have to play by the rules. If you want characters in the game to behave in a certain way, there's a level beyond which they can't go because the game is not coded to facilitate that. If you're playing, this is an old school reference because I'm not a gamer, but Space Invaders, for anyone that remembers the 80s. Just imagine you're playing Space Invaders, okay? Imagine it's 1981 or something. And then suddenly you're like, oh, I don't want to play Space Invaders anymore. I want to play Pac-Man now. Well, you can't play Pac-Man while you're in the middle of Space Invaders because the game is only coded to facilitate Space Invaders. Yeah. So in the same way, in this realm, you can't be a good person and be moral and conduct yourself in a responsible way and expect to live happily because the rules of the game don't allow for that. But you can live without consequence if you're an evil, lying, deceptive, satanic, psychopathic piece of shit. That will work for you. So I think the evidence for all this is staring us in the face, but it's just a very difficult thing for people to come to terms with because it's not comfortable, it's not reassuring, but possibly it is truth.
Yeah, and I'm no expert on scripture by any stretch, but I think there's a point in scripture, isn't there, where I think even Jesus says this is Satan's realm. So Satan is the adversary of good, isn't it? It's of love, if you like. It's the complete opposite. And this material world, maybe that's the thing. That's, if you want to sell your soul and gain your material wealth, then you're going to do nasty shit. But I think there's people like there's majority. I feel I've got the connection, that moral compass, the knowing inside that is wrong, but people do sell themselves very quickly as well, as we've seen over the past few years more than ever. Even if they consciously they think they're doing the right thing. I was in the chemist yesterday, Mark, and the guys, there's people queuing for this ridiculous injection that's still being pushed, and I could hear the guy in the room saying, you know, have you had any adverse reactions from your previous 4 that you've had? You know, and not no, you know, and in his world, he's thinking he's doing a good thing, but
How's he still standing?
unbelievable. I struggled to keep my mouth shut, to be honest with you. I just had to get out of there as soon as possible because, you know, these people. Anyway, not to go down that route, but we are seeing that, aren't we? That people are literally selling their souls without thinking and consciously coming within and realizing that where they're really from. And I think this is where we'll get into it, probably towards the end, actually, where, you know, there is hope in this conversation. But
Well,
people are looking. There has to be, but people are looking for that material gain, aren't they? They're looking for short fixes. They're looking for the saviors. So the teachings that we are given as children in religion is always to look outside of us, always to find someone to save us, to take us where we want to go. Everything is based that way. It's the same in politics. It's always the same story, but just changed slightly. The narrative's changed. It's like Trump and everyone else, you know, vote for this guy because he's going to save the world and expose this. Bollocks. I'll say it as it is. Bollocks. It's down to us.
That's right. A lot of soul selling goes on. My work exposes that. In the music industry, it's more obvious than anywhere else, I think. Occasionally, you see individuals apparently paying the price for the way they've behaved. So every now and again, you'll get the odd name, like P. Diddy, for example, who's in the news at the moment. P. Diddley, P. Dodie. He's been arrested, we're told. He's being held in a really bad jail in New York, in Brooklyn. And he seems to be reaping what he's sown. So for decades now, he's been engaging in every kind of behavior you can imagine. We're told allegations of sex trafficking and holding all these wild parties where all kinds of crazy stuff goes on, and the rich and powerful and famous and other celebrities have been in attendance, and all this stuff has been filmed. He's being described as the Jeffrey Epstein of hip hop. We're told that he's been arrested. We're told there's 120 odd different charges which are being leveled against him. But even if anything does happen to him, and there's still a chance that he'll be allowed to walk free, he's still only one individual. Let's go back to some of the names I mentioned earlier: Johnson, Hancock, Whitty, Valens, Fauci, Gates, these people. Does anyone imagine that any of these individuals is going to have to answer for what they did to huge numbers of people over the course of the past 4 years? Probably not, if we're being honest. Probably each and every one of them is going to pass away peacefully in their sleep at a ripe old age, having not been brought to bear to justice for anything they did. So that, I think, is an indication of the true nature of this realm. So my thinking now is that this place was created not for our betterment, not for the enrichment of our souls, but as a way of trapping us so that our fear-based energy, which is created through the way that we're forced to live, can be reaped and harvested. So it's often described as a Loosh farm, going back to that term first coined by Robert Monroe in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Loosh being extreme expressions of energy. So it doesn't just have to be fear-based energy. There's a lot of that around. A lot of people are feeling anxious, worried, fearful for various reasons. You've only got to turn on the mainstream news on any TV channel or radio station around the world, and all you get is fear, fear, fear. Oh my God, this is going to happen. Here's a reason to feel anxious. Here's a reason to feel twitchy and edgy. But you also get the flip side of that, which is extreme expressions of euphoric energy. So if you think of a football game, somebody scores a goal, and just that roar that goes up from the crowd and the energy. And a lot of people in attendance at these games talk about feeling that energy coming up their spine because it's just so extreme. So that's like joy and extreme happiness. But in my view, that's another expression of Loosh. And that can get harvested and feasted on as well by entities. We can get into that.
Yeah.
But in my view, that's why we have things like sports games thrust on us as well. So the average unthinking member of society will put on the evening news and get all depressed and down. But on a Saturday, they'll probably go to the football game. And it's not just football, it's all sports. And then they'll feel this euphoric rush of energy, and it's the opposite of that. And you can even apply that to the dance music rave scene. If you think of when that whole thing got going in the UK, acid house, rave, the super clubs, club culture, electronic dance music, people are popping E's, and their brain chemistry is changing, and it's generating this euphoria and this empathy. And when they're listening to a trance record and the beats break down and you have this wonderful euphoric build up, and it builds and builds and builds, and then it just goes into this crashing crescendo, and the crowd in attendance at the club just goes crazy. The energy levels just go through the roof. That, in my view, is another expression of Loosh. So everything has been set up to extract all this stuff. And it all points to this place having been created not by a loving, benevolent God, although I do believe that that force is still out there somewhere. But it goes beyond this realm and the next realm up, which is described as the astral plane, which is basically just an upper level of this apparent 3D reality. But once you go way beyond all of that, I do accept that there is an original creative generative force. How else to explain how we're here? Evidently, we're here. Whatever we are, we're real. So something created that. There is existence. Where did that come from? Well, I don't think the so-called God of this realm created everything there is. I think the so-called God of this realm is rightly described by many people as Satan. The so-called God of this realm was Yahweh in the Old Testament of the Bible, a psychopath by any other name. The so-called God of this reality was described in the Gnostic tradition as the Demiurge, and it was known as Yaldabaoth. And a name given to it by the Cathars was Rex Mundi. So there's many different names you can put on this force, this entity that's said to have created this realm. And whichever one you choose, what we're looking at is a lesser God. We're looking at some kind of force or some kind of entity which somehow was allowed to gain enough power to create an entire realm of existence for itself, this one. And we, as divine sparks, if you like, that's a phrase that you hear often, that came out of the Gnostic tradition as well, but it suggests that at our very core level, at the core of our existence, of our being, we are expressions of that original divine Godhead, the real God, if you like. And we are gods ourselves in that regard, which many people will have trouble with. Those of a religious persuasion will be like, no, we're subjects of God. We're effectively slaves and servants of God. We've got to bow down and worship God. But a different way of looking at things is that we are actually gods. We're all our own gods. We have creative power within us, and we're sovereign, and we're able to make decisions for ourselves. So I think this is where the good news lies, and we can come back to this towards the end. But something has to explain what it is that drives most people towards doing the right thing, living in the right way. So what I was saying earlier about how people that try and live in a moral manner and they consider the impact that their actions is going to have on others, even though they reap a whole world of shit for doing that, they still carry on behaving in that way. And it's that way with me. Even though I've come to these realizations, as dark as they may be, I don't believe it's made me behave in any worse kind of way. If anything, it's had the opposite effect. If anything, I'm more compassionate and more empathetic towards others now than I ever was before. And not only other humans, any living being. I'll go out in the garden and I will make a conscious effort not to stand on any ants. no pun intended, including yourself, or anything, slugs, snails. I will avoid them because I don't want to cause them any harm.
Yeah.
So I think coming to these acceptances has made me even more moral, and it's made me want to do the right thing even more. So where does that come from then? If you look around you and you see evil bastards succeeding in life and thriving, shouldn't that make everyone think, well, I'm going to behave in that way then? I'm going to tread all over other people and not give a shit about their rights and just do whatever I want in a completely selfish way. But most people don't live that way. I think most people want to be good and will do the right thing. If they saw somebody collapse in the street, I like to think that most people would run over and try and help if they could. So that's all coming from somewhere. And we call it a conscience. That prevents us from behaving in certain ways. It's that fail-safe sort of firewall, which is referred to as a conscience. And inherently, most of us know the difference between right and wrong behavior. There are going to be exceptions. There'll always be psychopaths and sociopaths in society who are incapable of being empathetic and compassionate towards others because it's just the way their brains are structured. But most people would like to help others if they can and would like to do the right thing if they can. And that has got to be our original true essence still within us. It's still bleeding through from somewhere. It's because we're expressions of that original Godhead, we're those divine sparks, that we seek to do the right thing. That's where our consciences come from. So that's something that this force, this entity, call it what you will, which created this realm, is not able to control. And that's why we have such a hard time living in this world. It's such a struggle because it's set up to reward evil and wickedness. But most of us don't want to live in an evil, wicked way. We seek to go beyond that. So the time that we spend in this realm, with all of its restrictions and all of its rules and regulations that have been set into place by the code, it's really, really difficult living in this world, in this realm, these lives. It's tough because this is not our true home. I believe that we've been tricked or coerced in some way into coming here because I don't accept that anyone would have agreed on a soul level to come into this realm. I mean, we hear that, there's light workers that have come in to help others and, people reincarnate because they want to come and help humanity to progress and all of this. That stuff just doesn't resonate with me anymore. People will make those arguments for days, but it's not for me anymore.
Yeah, and I think we've all got to have our own discernment and it's our own personal journey, and we've all got to try and figure things out in our own way, haven't we? But I'm with you absolutely in terms of the Gnostic story, and it is a story, but the way it's set out resonates with me on where we're at. That there's been some hijack of some description somewhere where this has ended up being a false reality. But there's something not quite right, is there? Like I remember speaking to you back when we had the festival, and you were telling me that you looked in the mirror when you were young, and you're like, well, I'm not from here, or you're this kind of a realization even at that age that something isn't quite right. And as you see the progress, like you say, through 2020, we are not seeing the truth happen the way it should. We're not seeing punishment. I don't want punishment, actually, but they should be held accountable for their actions, but it doesn't tend to happen, does it? And they will have a scapegoat like P. Diddler, as he is. So, they'll have these scapegoats, and people will start thinking, oh, well, that's all right. They've managed to get him, or Jimmy Savile's dead now, so there'll be no more of that. But they create these and people as if. And but the Gnostic thing really does kind of resonate with me at this stage of my journey, and I'm not saying that's going to last forever. It may not do, but right now I feel that we are in some kind of hijack. So if the Demiurge Yaldabaoth has created this game, if you like, that we're in and trapped us within it. Have you ever heard of Tom Montauk, Mark? Have you ever come across him?
Yeah, I think I've seen a couple of his videos.
Yeah, I mean, I like Tom. I like how he talks, and he's very intelligent, and I like the way he goes about his business and stuff. And he talks about the Demiurge as almost AI in itself. That it's operating this realm on a program. And that reminded me very much on our subconscious of that, that our subconscious, we kind of run 95% of our day with this artificial program running in the background that's been fed to us. And then that made me think, okay, well, if that's the case, I know when I fell ill a couple of years ago, I started to work on my subconscious. I started to change the programs a little bit of who I am, if that makes sense. I thought, hey, I'm not happy the way my life's going. And I know I'm going to face my challenges, but if I can alter some of this programming, then maybe I can improve my experience. And I have worked on that, and my experiences have improved a lot. Now, if the Demiurge is like that, let's say it's hackable itself. Let's say it's programmable. Maybe the collective can make a difference. If we can better ourselves and better each other, and as a collective we're more of a force, that God spark is more of a force, maybe this realm can change. I don't know. I mean, it's just a theory I've got, but what do you think?
I don't think this realm can ever change, to be honest. Again, because of the way it's been coded. So I think it's just going to go on the way it's always gone on. And again, if we look back through human history, all we've ever seen is war, hardship. I'm not aware of any period in human history where there's been joy, happiness, abundance, and peace all around the world, without some sort of trouble and strife rising up somewhere. So that should tell us something. I don't think this place can be fixed. I think it's a waste of time thinking you can fix it. That's not me saying that people shouldn't do the right thing and shouldn't resist evil and shouldn't try and put obstacles in its path. We've got a lot of threats facing ourselves and our children's generation right now with the New World Order master plan and all the various expressions of it. And I'm not for 1 second saying people should just sit back and allow this prison to be built around them. Absolutely, we have to rise up and resist and, do whatever we can to, if not stop this stuff, at least stem the tide a bit and prevent it from getting too bad. But ultimately, I don't think this place can be fixed because of the way it's been set up. So the best we can hope for is to find our way out of it and to help others to do the same if we can. I made the analogy in one of my videos recently between this realm and a corporate website, because I was trying to get my own mind around how this place works. If you think of a website like, I used Ryanair as an example, disgusting company, but a way of explaining the idea. If you wanted to book a flight to, let's say, Palma, Mallorca, you want to go on your holidays. You want to go from Manchester to Palma, Mallorca. You can go on Ryanair, you can book the flight. And the website will then throw up options. Oh, do you want to take a suitcase on? That'll cost you 30 quid extra. Do you want to pick your seats? That's 15 quid extra. Do you want to hire a car when you get to the airport? Do you want to book a hotel? Do you want to order some food? And it offers all these things to you. But all of that happens without any kind of human input at all. There's no individual sat in Ryanair HQ sending you these messages. The website does it because of the way it's coded. It's been set up. So you can go through an entire day and Ryanair will take all those flight bookings and all the suitcase bookings and all the hotel bookings without one single human having to do anything. The system does it all. Yeah. And I think that's what this place is like. So the Elderbeoth, whatever, the Demiurge created it, this force, this entity, and just left it to it. And it runs itself. So all the evil and the fear and the Loosh energy and stuff is generated, but without any of these beings or these forces, these entities, whatever these expressions of consciousness are, needing to get involved. It just takes care of itself. So a big question I've got, and I'm by no means claiming to have all the answers. I'm still piecing it all together in my mind. But, well, first of all, let me say that out of all the religious teachings I've looked at, all the systems, all the institutions, all the new age sort of spiritual ideas, the one that makes the most sense to me is the Gnostic teachings to explain this place that we find ourselves. It was created by this lesser god, this demiurge. We are trapped here on a soul level, and we've got to find our way out of it. And you're only ever going to reap fear, suffering, trauma. There's so much trauma. Trauma is the key to everything. It seems everyone comes with trauma. You hear the word so often. Counselors use it, therapists use it. It's in trauma-based mind control, but it's also in birth trauma. Just the very act of being born, the very act of coming into this place through the birth canal. There's a great researcher in America called Janice Barcelo who talks about birth trauma. And I first heard about this idea from her. Hospital births are set up to be as traumatic as possible for a new baby coming in. So you're in your mother's womb for 9 months, floating in amniotic fluid, and it's warm and it feels safe and it's happy and it's peaceful. But then before you're even born, Janice has said, you get these ultrasound tests to make sure the baby's okay. And so they clamp this thing to the mother's stomach, and the sound waves pulse through to the fetus, and it's absorbing it all. And it's very, very frightening and traumatic because it's invading that safe, quiet, calm, warm world with all this noise and this chaos, and it doesn't know what's happening to it. And then the moment of birth comes, and the baby is born into a room full of fluorescent bright lights, which are very frightening because it's not known light before that point. And the first thing the doctor does is smack its ass to make it cry. And we're told, the reason for that is to get the fluid off the baby's lungs so it can breathe properly. But no, actually, it's just trauma. It's more trauma. The second you arrive, you're given pain and a shock, and it's alarming, and it's hurtful, and it's frightening. So what chance do any of us stand when we're traumatized from birth? So again, that's part of the way that this reality has been set up. And this so-called elite ruling class has realized that the way to get on and the way to avoid hardship and stuff is to just be evil and just be wicked, and you'll get along fine because you're in sync with the coding of this place. So a question that I've got, and I don't claim to have the answer, and many people will claim that they do, is if that's what we've got, if that's what this realm is, and that's the way it seems to me, where was the original God of creation when this place was being allowed to be created? If we've got this lesser God, this Yaldabaoth, this fallen angel, Satan, whatever it is, which created this hell world, and we're its playthings, where was the original God of creation? Because I accept that there is one, which is far greater than this Yaldabaoth character. But why has that God force not shut this place down by now? Why has the Yaldabaoth thing not been banished to, oblivion? And why has this place not been discontinued?
I asked that question on a podcast recently because I haven't got the answer to that either, and it's a massive question. One of the answers I received was time itself, and I'm not saying this is right either because I don't know if I'm fully resonating with the answer either. But it's just another avenue. So time itself is an illusion, but time is much slower in the 3D world. And the changes have already been made, and we're experiencing those changes. But I mean, that could be just another cop-out. I don't know. But obviously, the fact is, I'm becoming more agnostic as I go along my journey as well, because literally, like Socrates says, I know nothing. But it's a massive question. Why has something not stepped in and intervened? But are we then again following the story of looking outside of ourselves to find the savior of this issue that we're facing?
Yeah, but if we decide that we want to fix the problem ourselves, what the fuck do we do?
I know.
You
Well,
know,
agreed.
even if large numbers of us say we don't want to live in this hell realm anymore, this place needs to go. It needs to be shut down so that future souls don't come in and suffer in the same way. How do we stop it? How do we cease this reality from existing? You know, we come in, like I said, we come in without a roadmap, and this is why I don't think these lives can be for our own benefit. Because where's the benefit in coming in with a mind wipe? So if reincarnation is real and we've lived before, most of us have no recollection of our previous lives. Some people claim to, but I don't. Most people I've spoken to don't. So seemingly, we come in with our minds completely wiped and we don't know where we are or what we're supposed to do. There was a great analogy from Eric Dubay, which I've used a few times, but he put out a video earlier this year. And he used the analogy of a bunch of people in a boat at sea. So a bunch of people wake up one day and they're in a boat out at sea, and nobody on the boat has any recollection of how they got there. Nobody knows who built the boat. Nobody knows how to operate the boat. Nobody knows where the boat is headed. That is a very good piece of symbolism for these lives. We don't know anything.
No.
We're just left to figure it all out. So if a loving, benevolent God created this place and we consented to come here to enrich our souls and grow and evolve and all of that, then wouldn't we retain some sort of memory of why we're here? Wouldn't there be some confirmation that that's why we're here? I mean, we're just guessing. People that tell you that, they're just guessing because nobody really knows.
No, I agree.
There's no proof of anything. And that's why agnosticism, as you've just said, makes the most sense out of any kind of belief system. Just being prepared to accept and to admit that you just don't know. You're trying your very best to find the answers. And I think you can find some answers, and I think I have. And I'm sure you have as well. But you get to a point where you just don't have the answers. So I think this realm is very much in line with the way the Gnostics described it. I think they were pretty much on point. And that would be a reason why they were persecuted so much and hunted down and obliterated. But then you get to the point where you ask yourself, well, how did the original God of creation allow this? How could this pit of hell be allowed to exist? It's an abomination to a loving, benevolent God, isn't it? So if some lesser being was allowed to create it, why has it not been shut down by now? So we have to be prepared to accept that we don't have the answers to everything. I go on podcasts and shows and stuff all day long, and every time I log into my email, somebody's saying, watch this video, have a listen to this podcast, and I do look at a lot of them. And all I hear is so many people spouting opinions and claiming that they've got the answers to everything. So they'll say, it's this way. And then the next podcaster will come on. No, it's not that. It's this. And then somebody else will come on. You're both wrong. It's this. None of them actually know. There's a lot of ego. Everyone wants to be the one to tell you what's going on, and they want to be the one that's got all the answers. But the truth is, they don't have the answers. None of us do. We can give it our best guess, and we can speculate, and we can formulate ideas based on experiences and such, but none of us actually knows because we're not allowed to know. This is a place of complete mystery, and we've just got to do our best to figure it out in the time that we've got here.
Out of interest, and this is like, I don't know if you ever have you ever thought about, if you were the creator yourself, how would you create the reality you're in? Have you ever thought about that? What would you have done? Because
I have. It's more a case of me looking at what we've got and considering how I would have done it differently. And this shouldn't be interpreted by anyone as me claiming that I'm any kind of god.
No, of course
any
not.
kind of creator god. I'm just saying that I can see ways in which whatever being or force created this realm could have done it so much better. So let's start with the human body. The human body is flawed. It's programmed to age and degrade and decay and to end in death. And people will say, well, yeah, you've got to have that. Otherwise, these lives would never end. But there's just so many flaws with it.
Mm.
Let's be graphic here. What is the point of us having to urinate and defecate? What's the point of that? So we have to take in food as an energy source to keep these bodies going. And then the food and the drink turns into waste product that we have to excrete. It's disgusting. It's horrible. Why? Why is it necessary? Let's expand that out to the natural world, the animal world. All that you get there every single day is horror and death and pain and suffering and fear. So living creatures hunt down other living creatures and in many cases tear them apart while they're still living so that they can continue to live themselves because their bodies need that nutrition. What? What kind of loving, benevolent entity would create a place where that was necessary when it could have been done so much better? It could have been designed so that all living sentient beings live in peace and harmony with each other. There's no aggression, there's no predation, and maybe they just feed on plants. People will say, oh, plants have feelings, but okay, if not plants, then breath, prana. How about that? I mean, why is it even necessary for us to have to take food into our bodies, whether we're animals or humans? Why is that necessary? It could have been done so much better. So, yeah, I can see ways in which the system that we've got could be improved. And, these bodies, they're prone to disease and decay. And what kind of sense does that make when people get cancer and some people are... What about people that are born mentally retarded? What about that? You're unfortunate enough to come in and you've got some sort of, condition where you can't think in the way that regular people can. Yeah. You've got some mental retardation. What chance do you stand in trying to figure out what this place is and, make sense of it all when your brain just doesn't operate in that way? You're just not able to make sense of it. Where's the justice there? What kind of sense does it make for people to come in like that? Look at people in wheelchairs their whole life through some hereditary disease that they've inherited through no fault of their own. What kind of sense does that make? Where's the value in that kind of life? People will make all kinds of excuses again, going back to the gaslighting. They'll say, oh, on a soul level, they wanted to experience what it's like to suffer, and it allows others to give them compassion. And so they learn their lessons through giving the help and the assistance that they need. But no, all of these are just excuses. They're excuses made by people who aren't bold enough to accept what's staring them right in the face, that this is a nasty place. I've always known it. You mentioned earlier a show where I talked about looking at myself in the mirror when I was a young boy and just thinking, I shouldn't be here. This is wrong. I've always felt that, to be honest. And, I've never wanted to be here. When I think back through my whole life, I've just never wanted to be here. So I wouldn't have chosen this. I was tricked or coerced in some way.
Yeah. And
my mission now is to find a way out of here, still working on that one.
Yeah.
And to never, ever come back at all, ever. Can I state it any more emphatically?
Not at all, mate. Not at all. Have you? I don't think we looked at the fine print. It's like when you get an app for your phone and you just scroll through and accept. I think that's what it was.
Yeah. I've got a friend that I talked to about this, and she says the terms and conditions were not made clear to me.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's what it is. I heard something. I was listening to a program the other day, as you do, and there was someone talking about this decision to come into this realm, and I'm like you. I don't feel I would have decided to come into a world of pain and suffering and torture. It's not what I would have decided to do. But this person stated, he said, can't remember who it was now. Anyway, it was interesting, but he said, when you choose to play for a football team, for example, you don't choose to have your leg broken, but it's the risk you take. But is that the small print on the terms and conditions? You don't read it properly and you don't know what you potentially might get yourself into. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, occasionally in my life, and more so recently since COVID, which traumatized all of us,
Yeah.
I've had these pangs of slight remembrance. It's difficult to explain, but I've been going through situations and they seem familiar to me. Like I kind of knew that this was going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing. So maybe there was some foreknowledge before I got here. Maybe it's the same for all of us of what I was going to go through.
Yeah.
But again, I can't accept that I would have agreed to it. I think, and this was part of the Gnostic teachings as well, that we are tricked or coerced into coming here somehow. And we hear this about when you pass over and you go into the astral realm, which is what lies beyond. This is the idea of the reincarnation soul trap, which is gaining a lot of traction recently. A lot of people talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that these entities, which would be lesser expressions of the Yaldabaoth demiurge thing, I guess, archons, they're described as by the Gnostics, archons or demons, if you will. They are very clever and deceptive. So the way that we have deception everywhere and duplicity in this realm is an expression of what's in the astral plane as well. There's more deception there, seemingly. And we hear through those that have had near-death experiences. So they've left their bodies, they've come out of the 3D, gone into the astral realm, and they've experienced what's there. They've come back and said that these beings, well, I don't think they realize that it's these beings that are doing it, but they come back and they say that they've seen certain figures. So if it's a Christian who has a near-death experience, they will experience the figure of Jesus. If they're a Buddhist, they'll experience the figure of Buddha, because that's what they're expecting to meet when they pass over because of their belief system. If you're not religious and you leave your body, according to many of these NDEs, you have loved ones who have passed over. Maybe your dead mum or your dead brother or whatever will appear to you. And what the majority of these people say is that these figures, whether it's Jesus or your dead mum, say you need to go back. There's a mission you need to complete on Earth. It's not your time yet. And they're very persuasive. And some of these experiences say they didn't want to come back. And they said, no, I'm beyond that now. I want to move on. But these figures say, no, you have to. You have to go back. And they end up coming back into their bodies, in many cases, against their will. And they say that that's what they encountered and that's what lies beyond. Of course, I've got no way of proving this because I've never had an NDE. But the idea does resonate with me. And I think it pays to be prepared for that if that's what we're going to encounter when we pass over. Those of us who have no interest whatsoever in coming back to this place. So it could well be that we're going to experience something like that. And these beings are going to be very, very persuasive. And they're going to say, no, you have to go back. It's not your decision, but it is our decision because we are sovereign. We have all the power we could ever need. And we are expressions of that original creative force, that divine Godhead, if you like. So we call the shots. We're not subservient to any kind of entity, especially deceptive, lying ones that have had to resort to those measures to get us to come here in the first place. We're way above that. So we get to decide. Another analogy is if you think of the average individual, people might refer to them as NPCs or normies, regular members of society. They will look up to authority figures in this life. So they might pay attention to the Prime Minister, other government ministers. They might pay attention to the BBC Evening News. They might pay attention to the priest at their local church or their doctor. All these authority figures, a professor, university professor, a celebrity. So they're used to, through an entire lifetime, being subservient to authority figures and doing what they say and
Yeah.
hanging on their every word. So when these people pass over, if they're going to encounter these beings who are saying, you need to go back into a new body, a new life, and there's lessons you need to learn, there's things you didn't do in this life, you've got to complete your mission. If they've spent a lifetime acquiescing to authority figures, they're far more likely to acquiesce to these figures and say, oh, okay, you know, I guess I better go back then. But you have many of us now who completely reject authority figures and anything they've got to say. Not interested in the BBC Evening News, not interested in Keir Starmer or anything he's got to say. We're the ones who are most likely, if that's the kind of thing we're going to encounter in the astral plane, to be able to say to these beings, fuck off. I'm moving beyond. There's no way I'm going back. You've got no power over me. I decide what I'm going to do. It's an anarchist state of mind. We need an anarchist state of mind in this world, and we need an anarchist state of mind in what lies beyond. We just need to carry that consciousness with us, and hopefully we can do that. Again, I don't know, but that's the closest to any kind of roadmap for navigating our way out of this realm and not finding ourselves back here all over again, like Bill Murray and Groundhog Day, that I can come up with right now.
And if Earth is a school, there is lessons in at least that, the fact that you are able to discern the fact that we are being tricked in this realm all the time. We're constantly being tricked, and if we can figure out how to navigate this area and have that discernment, then if it's true that we then go into the astral and are potentially deceived again, then hopefully, like you say, we have enough about us. Notice my German Shepherd has just took my screen down. But you know, hopefully we would have enough discernment ourselves then in the astral. I mean, who knows, Mark? Who knows? I tell you a story though, if it's okay with you. I have a friend who, interestingly, he had a road accident now, and he died at the scene, and they revived him. They brought him back. But he recollects seeing his family, the ones that have passed, across the road, waving him over. And he remembers that. But then he was revived and brought back. So it's interesting.
How did he feel about coming back? Was he happy about it?
He seems fine with it, but I tell you, his life definitely changed from coming back. Because he ended up with a gift, if you like. So he was able to see people with illnesses in colour. So he could actually start, if he was around somebody that was poorly in some shape or form, he would see them in a certain colour. So he was given a gift. It was almost like the filter that this human body is broke down. And funnily enough, I think this is where the human body and this is where the brain and your nervous system and everything else, I think, is a filter for this trap, if you like, if we are in this trap. My awakening came from a trauma, or it's an awakening. My awareness started from a trauma. So there's a filter there that keeps you as a normie, NPC. I'm not saying that none of those have had trauma, by the way, but for whatever reason, there's a trigger point for me. And the people that came to the pub during 2020, the majority that could see through the bullshit were coming from trauma. So there's something, I know we're born into it, and I'm totally with you on there, because that's outrageous that we're born into trauma, and then we're thrown into an indoctrination camp at the age of 4-year-old. We're controlled, we're programmed, boom, 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 all the way. But it's almost like trauma is reversed a bit of it as well. It's almost it's created an opportunity to see through the bullshit, but it's fascinating.
Well, I think again there, what you've described with your friend having this gift of being able to help people heal is another hint that we come from somewhere better originally. And some people feel that this realm of existence, which again is an idea that I struggled with for a long time, is some sort of overlay of something that was here before. So there was a realm of creation, which was 3D and physical, like this one, but it was much more attuned to the creation of a loving, benevolent God, the original God of creation. So there wasn't all this horror and fear and pain and stuff, but somehow this demiurge being was allowed to create a bad copy of it.
Yeah.
And that's where all the fear and all the horrible stuff came in. And we're trapped in that one, unfortunately. I'd prefer to be in the other one, but I seem to have not had a choice. So there's that idea. But just the fact that people have these gifts and are able to heal and things like that is another hint towards the idea that we're greater than this place, and we're greater than whatever created it. We come from somewhere else way out there. We've just got to get out of this trap to get back there, because it seems these beings, these entities, call them archons if you will, are very determined to keep us coming back in this recycled reincarnation loop.
Yeah.
And many of us have just had enough. We're pissed off with it, don't want to be here anymore. We're going to do what we can for as long as we're around. We're going to try and be as helpful and beneficial to others and to the world as we can for as long as we're required to be here. But we've got no interest in coming back. So we're going to have to be very determined and very resolute in standing firm and saying no to the gaslighting that we're possibly going to experience when our time comes to leave our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, this soul trap thing, it's interesting, and it is taking it is taking a bit of a storm at the moment, isn't it? You know, on YouTube at the moment, it's a very interesting topic. My only fear about it as well is that it's almost like the Christian kind of heaven and hell thing. If we don't do something, then we're doomed to keep coming back. I mean, maybe that's the case. I'm not saying it's not, but it almost makes me feel a bit limited, and I don't feel that I am limited. Like you said, I think if we are part of God, if we are the drop of the ocean, and there's nothing, once we remember who we truly are, if that is the truth, if that's the ultimate truth, then once we remember, then nothing's going to trap us or stop us doing anything we want to do, because it's our choice, it's our game then.
Yeah. Well, David Icke is saying that at the moment. You know, he's gone on to this subject area, and through recent interviews I've heard of his, he's saying that, you know, we just need to stand in our power, and we have the power to not come back if we don't consent to it. So I like to think he's on the right track. But I do wonder whether all the teachings of these secret societies and mystery schools through the ages all comes down to this kind of knowledge. What if what they're teaching in these places is the reality of this realm, the fact that it's designed to cultivate fear, pain, and suffering, the fact that if you want to get on in this realm for as long as you're here, then conduct behaviors that are in line with cultivating fear, pain, and suffering. But when you go beyond, you don't want to come back. Maybe that's what they're teaching in these places. And maybe it is as simple as just being firmly resolved to absolutely not coming back in any way, shape, or form. So people will say, depending on which religious tradition you're listening to or personal opinion, that you have to do all kinds of practices in order to gain enlightenment and find your way out of here. So some will say you have to meditate, and you have to think of monks in monasteries. They live an entire life just shut away, praying, chanting 10, 12 hours a day, abstaining from everything. And they believe that that's what you have to do to find your way into heaven, quote unquote. What if it's nowhere near as complicated as that? What if you don't have to meditate or do any of that stuff? What if you just have to carry with you that determination to not come back and to not be tricked and deceived? And maybe through the work I do exposing the music industry, I talk about subliminal messaging in music videos and ads and movies and stuff like that, programming the way that certain mindsets are cultivated in the general public's way of thinking through popular culture and entertainment, and how to break the spell, how to spot symbolism, all these signs and symbols that they put in music videos and on record sleeves and stuff. It's a case of just breaking the spell, learning to spot the signs and symbols, knowing what they mean, learning to spot predictive programming, learning to spot societal programming put out there by Tavistock and all these kinds of agencies, so that you can't be fooled in the same way. You're not susceptible to mind control anymore and social engineering. So maybe if you spend a lifetime learning how to break that kind of programming, maybe that's pretty good grounding for what you're going to experience in the astral, in what lies beyond. So maybe those of us that have paid attention to all this stuff and not just scoffed at it and said it's conspiracy theory, it's ridiculous, and had a right old laugh at it, as many people do, maybe we're standing ourselves in pretty good stead for the type of consciousness that we're going to have when we encounter whatever lies beyond, when we pass out of these lives. Just a thought.
It's again, because we don't know, but it's a great topic to discuss, and we should be talking about it. That's the thing. Like you mentioned earlier on, these are, especially, I'm 50 at the end of this year, and you get to a certain point and you start thinking, well, everything's temporary. That's for sure. There's always change. That's guaranteed. So these discussions are really important as we hopefully gain our sovereignty, moving on to the next area of this experience.
All roads lead to this point. I don't know about you, but I'm getting quite tired of looking at conspiracy stuff, and every single day I log into my emails. It's like, oh my God, they're doing this, and they're trying to unveil this plan and this next stage in the Agenda 2030 thing, and they're bringing in a 15-minute city here, and they're trying to put 5G into this city. And eventually my eyes just glaze over, and I'm like, it's just detail. All it is further detail. We already know what the agenda is, what the plan is. Yes, it's important to oppose these things, and if you're living in a city where they're trying to do one of these things, you should do all you can to galvanize support from others and stand against these outrages. But it's ultimately, it's all just information, more and more information and data, and you can end up drowning in that stuff, in the fine detail of it all: names, places, dates, detail. Eventually you reach a point where you have to question what any of it is all about and why any of it is happening. And that brings you to the very core question of just what is this place? What is it? Why are we here?
Isn't it? I know, it's bonkers.
It really is.
Where do you stand with duality, Mark? Do you see any value in it?
I used to think it was a really great thing. I've kind of changed my viewpoint on a few things. So I used to think synchronicity was great as well, because I used to see expressions of my born date everywhere I looked. Every time I looked at a watch, every time I looked at a DVD counter or the mileometer on my car, my born date. I used to think, oh, this is great. This is the universal God communicating with me and letting me know I'm on the right track. But now I see that sort of thing as slightly more sinister, because to me now it's just an expression of the coding. The reason I see all these things, I mean, it's ridiculous. The other day, I was driving on the motorway and I was considering matters of life and death and what lies beyond. And I overtook this van, just happened to glance at the van, pure cremation. It's a cremation service. At the very moment that I'm thinking about what lies beyond, of all the vans I could be passing, it's that one. So to me, that's coding, because
that's mockery.
Well, yeah, it is cosmic mockery. But it's coding because, and it's energy as well. When you think about certain subjects, you're exuding certain energetic frequencies, or you could use a computer analogy and say you're connecting with certain types of coding. And so you bring these things in. That van had an energetic frequency match with my thoughts about physical death. So it appeared to me. So I see that sort of thing now as slightly more sinister than I used to. And with duality, it's pretty much the same. I used to think, oh, it's great that everything's got an opposing value. And you can't have good without evil. You can't have up without down. You can't have male without female. But I think duality is another construct of this realm. So it's a bit like the passage of linear time. When you get beyond this realm and beyond the astral, there's no time. There's no passage of time. There's no physicality. Physicality, time, distance, space, and probably duality only exist in this realm. They're part of the construct. They're part of the game. This place wouldn't operate if they weren't here. So I think duality is only something we experience in this realm.
Yeah, I get that. I must admit, I do see a value in duality in terms of the fact that I know what I'm not when I see the likes of Hancock, as an example. I know I'm not that. So I find value in
you're not a woman
things.
as well.
Well, Susie is hard.
Despite what some might claim.
Exactly.
I mean about not you personally, but about, a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man.
Oh, Mark, I'm not being funny. It's the amount of stuff that gets through. That stuff is that I can't even be bothered looking at that anymore. That there's that much of it. We need to get a grip on certain aspects of our reality, and that's for sure. And I think we need to start figuring out, like you've been doing, what this place is all about, rather than worrying about if Beyonce's got a knob or not. I'm not really bothered, to be honest.
Yeah, we'll let Jay-Z worry about that, eh?
Well, yeah. Let's see what P. Diddley's situation takes them lot. I don't know. Probably nowhere, but hey, that is the realm we're in.
I do not want to see any of P. Diddley's videos, I'm telling you.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, it is interesting that, we go back to these individuals that are looking for power and material wealth and things like that. Have you ever gone down Paul Levy's work of the Wetiko kind of thing? Have you ever looked into that? The mind virus.
Yeah, not in a major way. I'm vaguely aware of the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not by far an expert. I've read his book and I've listened to some podcasts. It's very interesting. I mean, obviously the North Americans, the Native Americans, I should say, class it as Wetiko, and it's really Jung's shadow as well, really, but we're taken over by this force, this parasite, if you like. It's not necessarily an actual entity as such, but it's going through humanity and the narcissism and everything else that we see around us. We are all susceptible to this Wetiko, and Paul talks about the fact that we need to recognize that it's in us, it's part of us as well. It's like I consider myself a pretty decent guy, Mark. I'm a compassionate, loving man, but even I recently was in a shop and I gave this guy behind the till a tirade. I don't even know where it came from, apart from the fact that I've been grieving a little bit lately because my daughter's moved to London, and I could only think I'm emotional and I'm tired and everything else. But literally, I was at my end tether and I gave him 2 barrels. Not like me at all. But I sat back afterwards and I'm like, what have I probably ruined that guy's day today. You know what I mean? That's not like me. That's a terrible thing to do. So it's in us all, isn't it? These shadows.
Well, we've all had moments like that. And I think that's a part of it. Guilt and shame. These are expressions of fear-based energy. Maybe we're conditioned towards expressing those things, those emotional states, because it's very difficult to navigate your way through this realm through any given day without giving into anger or shame or guilt or resentment or whatever it is. It's very, very difficult to move through a human life, especially in these times. It's deliberately been made difficult for us. And we hear again from these NDE experiences that one of the weapons that's used to persuade souls to come back in, whether it's into the body they've just left or whether it's to reincarnate into a new body, is guilt and shame. This is the idea of the life review.
Yeah.
Where these entities have some way of showing you what you did in your life, a bit like a P. Diddy video, maybe. And they deliberately home in on the moments where you were less than perfect and you had an angry tirade in a shop, or you did something that you're not proud of. Looking back, you would have done it in a different way. They show you these things. They guilt shame you.
Mm.
And according to these NDEers, they make you agree to come back because you're so upset by the things that you did in your last life and you want to make it right by coming into a new one. But again, I think that's just another weapon that's used to gaslight us.
Yeah.
I think we're all victims here. We've become victims of this force or this parasite virus, if you like. And we never wanted to be here, any of us.
But if we're the God spark, though, Mark, if we're the God spark, then how do we then become that? How do we then remember that and find that? Because we are creators, like you mentioned before. You could be, like you say, driving on the motorway and thinking about certain things, and this is going to appear. We can create beautiful things as well as negative things. But how do we tip the balance more is where I'm at. You know, how do we become stronger and more powerful in this experience? Because I you know, as much as this realm is full of nasty shit, I actually really love my life. You know, I've had enough suffering over the years as well to you know, it's knocked me to the floor where I couldn't even get up for a while. I couldn't dress myself, but I still love my life. And I you know what that comes from for me? It comes from in here, that. It comes from in here, that there's something in here that I have love for, you know, for people, for nature, for animals, whatever. I've got that love. It's just always been there. It's who I am. But what I need to do is figure out how to make that where I'm creating the experience around me, which is full of love, because that's what I am, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And again, all that is coming from somewhere.
Mm.
You know, the fact that so many of us have compassion and empathy and want to be kind to others and kind to other living beings, that's not coming from Yaldabaoth or this bloody thing. That's coming from something far greater than that. And that must be our true essence. That's where we originally came from. So as for what lies beyond the astral, if we can find our way out of it and not be tricked into coming back, I have no idea what lies beyond. Yeah. Maybe what lies beyond is anything we want to. So maybe we can just have whatever kind of existence we would choose. And that's going to be steeped in joy and peace and love and not in all the horrible shit we've had to endure down here. Maybe you can just cease to exist if you choose. Maybe you could be like, well, you know, done a human lifetime, that's it, I'm out, bye, and that's the end. Maybe you can choose that for yourself. I really don't know. How can any of us know?
We can't. We can only have these discussions, but
yeah, and there's value in them, great value in them.
There's great value in it, and again, where the duality is concerned for me, it's like I need a challenge. It's almost like I need to step up and have a challenge. I can't. I want a peaceful life. That's ultimately what I want. But if I have too much of a peaceful life, am I going to get bored? Am I going to, do you know what I mean? Am I going to need something just to, it's like I need to do, so it's like I'm doing this channel. I don't need to do it. I'm not making anything from it. So what's the point? You know, but there's something burning inside me that's important.
There's a lot of point to it. My work saves my life, really. If I didn't have my work, I don't know what. I'm just very grateful that I can do the work that I do. And I intend to keep doing it for as long as I'm able. And then, you know, we'll see what lies beyond, won't we?
We'll see when we have a...
Reminds me of a song by the rapper Coolio from the 90s called See You When You Get There. He says, I'll see you when you get there. If you ever get there, see you when you get there. So we'll see.
We'll be having a podcast in the astral, won't we?
Yeah, floating on a cloud, sipping a cocktail, doing a podcast.
Yeah, I'm going, what the fuck's next? Because this play...
We'll get out of this life and we're like, what the fuck was that all about?
I was listening to...
What did we just experience? What was that?
What do you think goes on in the astral then? Have you done any research there?
I'm hearing that the astral is a lot like this apparent 3D reality, and there's slavery there, and these archons rule over you there. I don't know if that's the case.
We can't know, can we?
No.
Well,
but gotta hope it's not. Certain people have claimed to come back from the astral, and they've said, "Oh, it's just a lot like human society here. You still have to work, and you still have to feed yourself, and all that stuff." I really don't know.
Surely you don't need food. I mean, like, I was, you know what? The Toltecs believed that we were breatharians. The Toltecs believed that we didn't need to eat. So, this is again, it's with the stories and the conditionings that we're brought into. I don't know. I'm going on a 5-day fast retreat at the end of this month, Mark. Part of me is excited and part of me is dreading it because I love food so much, and I don't know how I'm going to manage. I get hangry, you see.
I wish you all the best with that, mate. I really do. I had to go 24 hours recently without any food in preparation for a medical procedure, and it was tough. Just a day without food. My stomach was rumbling, and that's one day. So I wish you all the luck in the world with that one.
I know it's going to be tough for me. That my missus said, she's the welcome to you, because I'll get ratty. I'll get ratty by day 2 for sure. So I don't know what's going to happen there. It's such an honour as always to speak to you, Matt. I come across something earlier on, and I thought I'll bring it up. It's a piece of work from C.S. Lewis, and I don't know his work, but it's interesting that this came up on Twitter this morning before I'm chatting to you. So I thought, oh, if you don't mind, I'll just read it because I thought it was quite interesting. Sure. It said, "How can a good God let you suffer and die?" And C.S. Lewis apparently asked the very question when his wife died. Lewis had been a Christian for sort of like 20 years or something, and the death of his wife had completely rocked his faith. And he wondered, how can God possibly be a good entity, if you like, if he's suffering so much? And the quote there is, "No one told me that grief felt so like fear. I'm not afraid, but the sensation is like being afraid. The same fluttering in the stomach, the same restlessness." He said, "I dread the moments the house is empty." And then it said, worse than this, Lewis then adds that he's tempted by evil. His quote is, "I'm not in danger of ceasing to believe in God. The real danger is coming to believe such dreadful things about him. The conclusion I dread is not that there is no God, but rather, so is this what God's really like?" And the conclusion that I read from it, apparently, is, the quote is, "The greater the love, the greater the grief." And this is Lewis's answer to the problem of pain. He said he realised he grieved his wife deeply because he loved her so deeply. In other words, the price of love is heartbreak, but it's a price worth paying. That it's impossible to understand love without suffering. And it's an interesting one, because recently my auntie lost her 19-year-old pet, a dog, and the dog was her world. And I know what that feels like, because I've lost a dog that was my shadow for 15 years, was always by my side, and the pain of that. I'm recently going through a weird bit of grieving because my daughter's now 18 and she's buggered off to London and she's no longer needing me. So I'm going through these steps. But I know that the love that I have for my daughter, the love that I have for my son, my wife, everything's temporary, isn't it? There's a change everywhere. But I wouldn't know that love so much. I thought it was interesting if I didn't know the pain of it as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, he's talking about duality again, isn't he? You can't
Yeah,
have extreme love without extreme pain to balance it out, to counter it. I've got a lot of time for C.S. Lewis, actually, in his teachings.
yeah,
He is connected to Oxford, which is just down the road from me. And I've looked at quite a few of his statements. And I like the fact that he was on a quest to try and comprehend the nature of God in the same way that we're trying to do with this discussion.
yeah.
There's a great movie, actually. I think it was called Shadowlands
Ah,
in the
okay.
90s. And it starred Anthony Hopkins playing
Yeah,
C.S. Lewis.
right.
And in the movie, you see him gradually falling in love with his wife. It's years since I've seen it, but it's a very slow process. And eventually he discovers what love is, and he really feels deep love for this woman. But by that point, she's gravely ill. And a short while later, she dies just after he'd learned the real value of love. That's the way it's depicted in the
Right,
movie. And,
right.
what's that all about? That just seems cruel to me.
Mm,
And I think
mm.
it probably felt cruel to him, which coloured many of the writings that he did.
Interesting.
But yeah, I just like the fact that he was someone who was prepared to ask those questions, and he'd come from being a Christian as well.
Mm.
And most Christians don't ask those kind of questions because they're entrained not to.
Fear,
So
though,
yeah,
isn't it?
he was a heavy guy.
It's fear. It's fear. There's fear. There's so much fear involved in the teachings and the stories that we're given and the programming that we have. Everything's about fear, isn't it? Not finding that truth. If we are the God spark, we're kept away from that by the programming and the fear. We must look outside. It always seems to come back to that for me. Wherever I go with it, whoever I speak to, it always seems to come back to that we're better and more powerful than they want us to believe.
Well, if you can't have light without darkness, then so many of us have been through enough darkness in these lives. So it's time to let the light in.
100%. Before, I know I don't want to keep you, but don't you find it interesting as well, now that the soul trap thing's taking shape and people are talking about these subjects more, or at least, there's a few of us at least talking about these subjects. Don't you find it interesting that the alternative media are now all becoming born-again Christians? People like Russell Brand and Jordan Peterson and all these guys. I think it's quite interesting that that's now appearing and creating more distraction and diversion away from topics.
Yeah, Christian truthers, which is a bit like saying vegetarian carnivores to me.
It's a wild world, that's for sure. I mean, I think the Gnostics seem to get it right for me, and films
More than any other teachings I've looked at, yeah, they were on point.
I think so. For me, at this moment, anyway, unless things change. But like Westworld, the program Westworld just seems to be what it's like. That you've got these entities, if you like, or these controllers that kind of take you out the game, reprogram you, and shove you back in. But we need to find a way of taking power back.
Another great show was Ashes to Ashes. Did you ever see that on the BBC?
I only saw a little bit of it. Yeah, I do remember it being out, but I never really watched it.
So there was Life on Mars, 2 series, and then 3 series of Ashes to Ashes. And Ashes to Ashes was great. I don't watch TV, but I did get put onto that show. And the final episode tells you so much truth cloaked in fiction, but it's allegorical. I won't give everything away for anyone that wants to watch the show, but you get an insight into one of these controllers, these handlers, these entities that is keeping souls trapped in this artificial construct, this world. And there's a certain way in which they are able to escape and move on. And it's one that will definitely appeal to you, having been a publican.
I'll have to check it out then. Mark, so I want to thank you. One, great chatting to you again. I hope we don't keep it too long for the next conversation we have, because I do enjoy having our conversation.
Another year, probably, going by our usual rate.
Another year. And it's been a bonkers 4 years so far, but keep doing what you're doing. I think it's so important. I mean, even that, going back into the music industry and the work that you've been doing over these many years, it's so important that we shine the light into these shadows. We've got to keep doing that. Otherwise, how do people wake up to what's going on? And that's within ourselves as well. That's what I feel. I've got to keep finding those shadows in myself to keep improving. And I think we're doing that collectively in the world. And that's why they can call us what they like, tinfoil hat, whatever they want. It's important work. So grateful for everything that you do. As when you came to my festival and I said, you've ruined my life, you did. But I love you for it. You know, the work is fantastic. So I do appreciate you, Mark, and I'm always here to have these conversations, Mark, whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Thanks for getting me on, and you're doing great work as well. It's important that we do keep on doing it. I think I'm going to write a book about all of this, actually, because I've got another book coming up next year, which will be another in the Musical Truth series. And then I'm going to do my next novel, which will complete the trilogy. But the next book beyond that, I think, is going to be about all this stuff. And I'll probably call it Is God Really Good? Just to have a really controversial title out there, just to really push people's buttons. So,
well, the triggers are important, though. Do you not think triggers are important, though? Otherwise, because that allows you to, people are projecting. They keep projecting, but actually it's important to look at why is that triggering me? What is it that's bothering me there? You know, these things are important. So we've got to keep pushing that shadow.
Yep, and we will.
And we will. Thank you, brother. It's been an honor.
All right, man. Cheers.
All right. You take care.
All the best.